Hey, you want to know something better than the last person you slept with? Topkats Rebel Connection. You're welcome. Topkats Rebel Connection. It's great to be hanging out with you again here during the 10th month of 2016. I know you out there getting your hustle and your bustle in and trying to get that Christmas money straight for your loved ones. My name is Otis Q. Pate, here back from a fresh sabbatical, about 2 weeks. A sabbatical. Do you know what a sabbatical is? A sabbatical is like ceasing. It's I think it derives from the Hebrews, the word sabbatical, sabbatical, sabbatical. It's like, it means like ceasing and a rest from work or taking a break. And most of the breaks traditionally from this time period of the Hebrews, it was for 2 months to a year. That's when they ceased from work and took a break and things like that to refresh, to rejuvenate. And all the while, I've had all type of information come in. I'm always doing research. And one of the most interesting things that came to a head or rose to the top of my pile of archived information for shows was the current situation in our country, the USA, having to do with the debt spending. And wow, some people really do not have a concept of money, and many people do not even know that the U.S. debt, which is created by the government, belongs to the people. And by the way, when you take into consideration that taxes, which were collected here in 2016, or I guess the taxes that were collected from 2015, was about 2.17 trillion or something like that. It was in the trillions. It was 2 point something trillion that was collected. I don't know. I have the odd accounting novice belief that some of that money could have been used in order to bring the grand total national debt down for our country. But since I'm fresh off of this sabbatical, I'm going to delve into this information about this $9 trillion debt that the current president has created for whatever reason, good or bad. And we'll be right back after this vibe session. Indeed. President Obama, trillionaire. There seems to be no limit to the amount of money that the man can spend. These are his words from 2008 through 2014.
Number 43 added $4 trillion by his lonesome, so that we now have over $9 trillion of debt that we are going to have to pay back. $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
But I refuse to leave our children with a debt that they cannot repay. Understand, if we don't take meaningful steps to rein in our debt, it could damage our markets, increase the cost of borrowing, and jeopardize our recovery. Now, the final critical step in winning the future is to make sure we aren't buried under a mountain of debt. Saddled us with more debt and left innocent, hardworking Americans holding the bag. As the average person thinks raising the debt ceiling must mean that we're running up our debt. It allows us to meet our obligations to future generations without leaving them
Now,
of debt.
as of October 2016, President Obama has over $9 trillion of U.S. debt in his 2 terms as president, more than 42 previous presidents combined.
That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
These are the words of President Obama at the Democratic National Convention held July 25th through the 28th, 2016 in Philadelphia.
I love you back. By so many measures, our country is stronger and more prosperous than it was when we started. And through every victory and every setback, I've insisted that change is never easy and never quick. So tonight I'm here to tell you that, yes, we've still got more work to do. More work to do for every American still in need of a good job or a raise, paid leave or a decent retirement, for every child who needs a sturdier ladder out of poverty or world-class education, for everyone who has not yet felt the progress of these past 7.5 years. This is a more fundamental choice about who we are as a people and whether we stay true to this great American experiment in self-government. Now, lots happened over the years. And while this nation has been tested by war, and it's been tested by recession, and all manner of challenges, I stand before you again tonight, after almost 2 terms as your president, to tell you I am more optimistic about the future of America than ever before. How could I not be, after all that we've achieved together?
A mountain of debt. A mountain of debt. A mountain of debt.
That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
and please take mine. Just take a little, or burn the light. My life is in your hands, I don't ever want the fire to stop. Just bring your pretty face and wear your best dress. Forget about the money, let's leave all this mess behind. Just take your time, and please take mine. Just take your time, and please take mine. We can call the hotel home, doesn't matter if we're all alone. No, 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 no. It's a hopeless slow dance where love is like a neon. It's a broken romance where love is like a neon. It's a hopeless romance where love is like a neon. Gotta slow this slow dance where love is like a neon. Just wait a minute, hold the phone. If we could just freeze this moment, then we'll never go home again. Then we'll never go home again. Then we'll never go home again. It's a hopeless slow dance where love is like a neon. It's a broken romance where love is like a neon. It's a hopeless romance where love is like a neon. Gotta slow this slow dance where love is like a neon. It's a hopeless slow dance where love is like a neon. It's a broken romance where love is like a neon. It's a hopeless romance where love is like a neon. Gotta slow this slow dance where love is like a neon.
Topkats Rebel Connection.
1 with 12 zeros. Do you know what that number is? 1 with 12 zeros on the end. You got a 1 in the front, and following that 1, you have not 3 or 6 or 9 zeros. You have 12 zeros. Do you know what that is? What that number actually is? That number is a trillion. A trillion comes after 1,000, a million, a billion, and then you have 1 trillion. And just by the way, after 1 trillion comes 1 quadrillion. 1 quadrillion. Or I guess you could also say a quadrillion. We are talking about massive sized numbers here. When we start talking billions and trillions and quadrillions, we're talking massive sized numbers. I'm sure that most people can't even really put into perspective what a million actually is. Even though we have the ability to understand basic mathematics and all of that type of stuff. But when you actually think about 1 million of anything, that is a big number. But again, I don't think that most people can quite put into the right perspective what a million is, or a billion is, or a trillion is, or a quadrillion is. Most certainly not. Have you ever even tried to count to 1 million, by the way? Or let's just back up a little bit. What about counting to 1,000? Just for whatever reason, have you ever had to count 1,000 of anything? Perhaps you've been into retail and shopping marts, supermarkets, stuff like that, doing inventory. You've had to do inventory, the yearly inventory or the quarterly inventory or however it's set up. But when you do inventory, you have to do a lot of counting. And the bigger the place you work in where you're doing this inventory, let's say some big super shopping mart. The bigger the place is, the more things you have to count. The larger the inventory. So perhaps you have counted up until 1,000. Well, have you ever had to count to 1,000,000? I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, allotting for 1 second in between each count. Some would say 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Do that up to 1,000 or 1,000,000, and well, I think you get the picture. That is a pretty big number. Just 1,000, we go to 1,000,000, and then we start talking billions. Wow. Well, there are those amongst us in our society who, irregardless of how big the number gets, it has no effect on their psyche. And many of these people are often in banking, or they're in politics. When you're in politics, you can live on the dole, as they say in the UK. You can live on the welfare of the people. You can let the people, the public, pay your bills. In those positions, you often get tax breaks. In most Western countries, you get some type of tax breaks, or you get all type of gratuities and things like that. So you're living on the welfare or off of the welfare of the people. You're living on the dole. And once these politicians, and this is not with any ill intent, this is just to speak truth to fact and to just be accurate here. In these type of positions, you do live off the dole, and you also find that these people are very much against those tax-paying citizens in whatever country it may be. People of the public being on the dole, being on the welfare system, like they are. They love to be at the trough, so to speak, at the pig's trough, just taking it all in, just eating it all up, hoarding it all for themselves, even though we are tax-paying citizens and our money goes into, well, more areas than we would probably even know as citizens who pay taxes. We are what makes the whole wheel turn. We are what the United States government need in order to have financial resources and in order for them to be able to, well, do anything. Because everything takes money. Services take money. Travel, eating, upkeep on the White House, for example, for the president, the payment for the fuel for Air Force One, his jet. And I think there's also 2 of those big jets that the president has, for example. The lights got to be kept on. There's plumbing in all of the government facilities. All of these limos that they ride in have to be paid for, as well as the security detail, and not to mention many, many, many other things. So noticing that these people who often are on the public dole for 20, 30, some even 40 years, they get kind of desensitized to how much 1,000 actually is, let alone 1,000,000, billion, and yes, certainly 1,000,000,000,000. Take, for example, here in October, we're looking at about the halfway point, a little bit beyond the halfway point here in October 2016. It has been recently revealed that our president, the politician, and I have to say that in reference to the previous information that I was sharing, the president has been published. The publication has had to do with his debt spending since his 2 terms in office. Well, it hasn't been a full 2 terms yet. At this point, it's been about 7 years a little bit beyond 7 years. President Obama took office in 2008. That's when he was elected. So I guess he was sworn in January 2009. And during his term, he has spent $9 trillion. $9 trillion. That's a 9 with 12 zeros following the 9. Thousands, millions, billions, trillions. And that number that I've read about in numerous publications, that number makes him a president who has spent more money during his term than all 42, well, actually, it's now 43 presidents before him, because President Obama is the 44th president of the United States. Bush Jr., he was the 43rd president. And of course, before Bush Jr., there was Bill Clinton. The 44th president has spent in just 2 terms more money than all the presidents before him did. All 43 presidents that preceded him. 9 trillion is the number that we're talking about again. Every U.S. citizen is responsible for the debt. And by the way, the grand total on the U.S. debt clock, which you can check online, you can just put in U.S. debt clock. The grand total is over 19 trillion. My name is Otis Q. Pate, here on the Topkats Rebel Connection.
Edutainment wrapped in eclectic music.
This article from cnsnews.com, it says, debt under Obama up $9 trillion. So before I just touch on this article, I want you to know that it's by Terrence P. Jeffrey, and it's from October 7th, 2016. And it says here that the federal government passed a fiscal milestone on the first business day of fiscal 2017, which was Monday, October 3rd, when the total federal debt accumulated during the presidency of Barack Obama topped $9 trillion for the first time. On January 20th, 2009, when Obama was inaugurated, the total debt of the federal government was $10,626,877,048,913.08. And that's according to the data published by the U.S. Treasury. And when you click on the link in the description info box, you can go and check that out for yourself. For those who are a bit skeptical or just love numbers, as of the close of business day on Friday, September 30th, the last day of fiscal year 2016, the total federal debt was $573,443,713,936.79. At that point, the total federal debt has increased under Obama by $8,946,567,665,023 and of course 71 cents. Woo. As of the close of business day on Friday, September 30th, the last day of fiscal year 2016, the total federal debt was, are you ready? $19,573,444,713,936.79. And at that point, the total federal debt had increased under Obama by $8,946,567,665,000, and I'm going to let you finish the rest, and 71 cents. So that means on Monday, October 3rd, the first business day of fiscal year 2017, the total federal debt closed at $19,642,949,000,000, and I'm going to let you finish the rest, and 51 cents. At that point, the debt had increased under Obama by $9 trillion, 16 billion, 72 million, $693,648.43. As the close of business on Wednesday, now we're talking about October 5, the latest day for which the Treasury has reported, the total federal debt was $19,663,411,497,797.40. That means that so far Obama's presidency has caused a federal debt increase of $9,036,534,448,884.32. Okay, now we're getting into the whole reason why I am sharing this find with you is because underneath President Obama's federal debt, which is up $9,036,534,448,000, etc. This given number, which is calculated with 118 million 215,000 United States households as of June 2016, which is the latest estimate from the Census Bureau of the United States, the $9,336,534,448,884.32 increase in the federal debt under Obama so far equals approximately $76,000 and 442 cents per household. As I said, that's the significance of this, is that U.S. citizens, tax-paying citizens, and even later, the children who decide to remain in the country and live as citizens and not move abroad to other countries, etc., this debt actually belongs to them and it belongs to us.
Edutainment wrapped in eclectic music.
Now, for our further understanding, what I have to include is these remaining short paragraphs, because we have to understand that it's very, very serious regardless of the age. It doesn't matter if you're a teenager checking this out or an adult, or it, in my opinion, is very significant that the Treasury divides the total debt into two major parts. Okay. Now, that debt is held by the public and the intragovernmental debt. Debt held by the public are U.S. government securities, including bills, notes, and bonds held by the individuals and institutions outside the U.S. government. Intragovernmental debt is the money that the Treasury has borrowed and spent out of federal government trust funds, such as those for Social Security programs. According to the Treasury, during Obama's time in office so far, the debt held by the public has climbed from $6,307,000,000 etc., on January 20th, 2009, to 14,170,897,000,000, etc., on October 5th, 2015. And that's an increase of 7,863,586,000,000, etc., or simply about 125%. The amount that the president has increased the total federal debt so far, as we discussed, is $9,036,534,000,000, etc. And that is $4,137,000,000,000, etc., more than the preceding president, which was George W. Bush. 84% more. 84% more. And we know, most of us anyway, that George W. Bush was the president that increased the budget significantly, or I should say the debt, which seems to be one and the same to me, significantly because of the war on terror in the Middle East, namely Afghanistan and Iraq. So since that he was a wartime president, as it's called, we would expect that that would be something that would be reasonable for him to do that, regardless of whether we agree with the war or not. However, when you include in this whole formula here, this whole mathematical formula, that President Obama has spent 84% more than a wartime president, and I guess many would also say that Obama has been a wartime president, although he did receive the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009, perhaps, or 2010, something like that. He received the Nobel Peace Prize. So 84% is gigantic to me. What this all means is that it took the United States, which declared independence in 1776, 231 years to accumulate the first $9 trillion in debt, with the debt first surpassing that level on the last day of August 2007. Conclusively on August 31st, 2007, the total federal debt was $9,506,461,262.70. Since then, it has grown by $10,657,000,000,000, etc., or approximately 118% to the current level of, as we discussed at the top of the news report, $19,663,411,497,797.40. Now, the most interesting thing, I think, out of all of this, except for all those facts and figures and whatever amount of money that actually means when we start talking billions. And by the way, after a billion comes a quadrillion. And it seems like we're going to be looking at that sometime in the future. Well, hopefully not, because that is a gigantic, astronomical, retarded number. And you'll find that many people who deal professionally with money and finance and things of that nature, they are saying that, well, they've said this for years, is that the debt is not able to be paid back. It is unsustainable and it is not repayable. In case you didn't know, President Obama has spent more money in his 8 years in office, or should I say 7 years in office, because the first year of the budget is from the previous president. So they actually only have 7 years that their budget is in effect while they're in office, because each president's budget overrides the next president. Just a little tidbit for you. But since he's been in office 7 years, he has spent more money than all of the presidents before him. So that means with him being the 44th president, he has spent more money than 43 presidents combined. And again, don't forget, the money he's spending actually belongs to U.S. citizens. That debt belongs to us. It's being charged to us. It is being secured by us. And most of the debt, as far as I know, is owned by China. The link will be in the description information box for your scrutiny and for you to share or whatever. My name is Otis Q. Pate for the Topkats Pride and Topkats Rebel Connection. And I'd like to thank you for joining me. Topkats Rebel Connection can be found at Spreaker.com/TopkatsAirborne. That's Spreaker.com/Topkatsairborn. This has been a Topkats Pride Wild News Edutainment Report.